And we are officially live. Another episode of Shut Up and Invest. And this is the long anticipated one. We got the master, the wizard, the ninja, Mr. Subject to himself, Mr. Pace Morby in the house. What's up, my brother?
Thank you guys for having me on. I really appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Hey, how you doing, man?
Now, for those of you who don't know, we're going to get into the nitty gritty of creative financing. We're going to talk about the horror stories. There's a lot of fear, subject to wraps, owner financing. Wait a minute, if I mess up, how much money? Oh my God. I mean, Pace was just breaking down a $31 million deal that could turn into a $150 million deal. But we also talk about the 20 to 30 to 40 to $50,000 deals. You get this all in this show. So let's jump right into it. J Money, what's up, my boy?
Hey, how you guys doing, man? Pace, you out there somewhere in the middle of America, middle of nowhere?
That's right. Yeah, dude. You just got back from where? Where were you? Puerto Rico?
No. That's later on. I was in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, which is kind of.
Oh, when are you going?
Probably,
when are you going down to Puerto Rico?
I actually go there this weekend. I go down this weekend for a few days. So,
bro, your life sucks.
You know, man. I mean, I'm just trying to keep up with you, man. Every time I see you, you're in a different state, different RV, different park. So, I got to bring you to the UP though. That's like being in America, but we're above Canada. So I was up there on Lake Superior. It's like 50 degrees right now.
So nice, dude. It's so nice. In Arizona, my hometown, it was 122 degrees the other day. I came home for like 4 or 5 days because we have, this big development we're building. There's Leo. Leo's down in Houston. Leo Aguirre, nice guy, really, really nice guy. So I went back home just to sign some documents, and we couldn't get a mobile notary where I was. So I was like, I'll fly home. I'll see my little boy. I have a kid that's an adopted son, so I don't see him all the time. Mm-hmm. So I fly down there. I get off the tarmac, and I'm like, why? Why does anybody live here in Arizona during the summertime? It is so bad. So anyway, we're up in Montana looking at acreage right now. We're thinking about buying between 100 and 200 acres with a river going through it. So
are you trying to get next to Kanye? I know what you're doing.
Kanye.
I'm not on his level yet. I hope to one day be a billionaire, but I don't think I think that's 20, 30 years down the road for me.
Yeah, well, our creative financing strategies will help us all get there. That's the key.
100%, bro. That's why you're traveling just as much as I am. What are you talking about?
Hey, I'm trying to do my thing,
And knowing Jay, he goes to Puerto Rico, and then he might end up. That's the next moving spot, because every time him and his wife end up somewhere and they like it, here comes new plans.
I know, dude. He goes over to Hawaii for like just on a whim, then ends up staying there for like almost a year.
Yeah. And his market is Pennsylvania, Harrisburg, and all these small little things. People think that these small markets can't allow you to end up living in Hawaii, Miami, and maybe Puerto Rico. What's up, Jay? You want to break some news? You want to break some news on the show?
We're in negotiations, right? We're in discussions.
Dude, that would be amazing. The problem is you also have this other part of your amazing life. You've got kids that you're coaching. And so that would be really tough, right? So like you might have to wait till you're done coaching and then go skirt off to Puerto Rico.
Yeah, I mean, I always have the coaching. My last son is now going to college. I coached him up to a scholarship in college to play football. So, he's gone. So, I might have to coach him. Might have to bring American football to Puerto Rico. Pipeline to the U.
Love it. Well, guys, I got this interesting story that happened yesterday because Jory and I were talking about. Jory's like, "Yo, what do you want to talk about?" And I'm like, "Well, it's not that very often. Jory is like." Jory and I have spent a good amount of time together. I'd say there's about 10 guys that I can fully have a conversation completely, like no chains on me. We can talk about any wording, any vernacular, any strategy. And even though I don't utilize as many seller finance exit strategies as you guys do, I like doing lease options and I like doing some strategies you guys aren't doing as much of. I just have such a fun time talking to guys also at a very high level in the game, especially about creative finance, because there's not a lot of people that are that intelligent or that experienced in the game, which is amazing for us. So when we were talking, he's like, I'd love to have it on. I actually was like, yo, I want to be on your show, bro. I love you. I love your show. I want to be on the show. He's like, great. What do you want to talk about? I said, look, we can talk about all the crap that everybody else talks about, but why don't we talk about the nasty stuff. Why don't we talk about some bad things that have happened to us, how we overcame them, either A, amplify fear, or B, dispel some myths today on the show. And then between that conversation and yesterday, I got a text message from my team that said that one of my lease option tenants moved out of a property, like no notice at all, moved out of a property. And most people would look at that and go, oh my gosh, that's crappy. Now you got a mortgage you got to worry about. You got these potential repairs you got to worry about. But let me tell you about this deal real quick. And maybe you guys have people, I know this is StreamYard, so you got people maybe making comments on the side. If you guys have questions, I imagine, Brent Moreno is another one of the few people that we can have like an unencumbered conversation with. He's an amazing guy. Love him and his whole squad down there.
He's a ninja.
He's a ninja, dude. Those guys are amazing. So I have this property on in Phoenix. We lease option it out. We take $6,000 as an option fee from the tenant about 6 months ago. Not only do they give us a $6,000 option fee, I don't actually put any money into the renovation. I kind of pull a Jory Alston on the people, and I'm like, yo, this is as is. I'm not even going to dust off the cobwebs, right?
Pace has seen them. Pace knows what I'm saying, man. As is.
I've been to your Harrisburg houses, bro. It's amazing. So, I pull a Jory Alston. I'm like, yo, I'm going to just not even clean this thing up. Usually we'll do like a $3,000 to $4,000 cleanup on a property, paint, some landscape cleanup, whatever. But on this one, we're like, yo, as is, $6,000 option fee. And then they also have to pay first and last month's deposit above and beyond the option fee. So we ended up collecting about $10,000 from this tenant option potential buyer. They go into the property. They put $15,000 into brand new tile, all new flooring, a new shower, and then they replace a whole bunch of the pool equipment. Mm-hmm. We get a notice yesterday that the tenant was like, yo, I'm reading through the contract and I realized that I'm not, legally able to get any of this money back, but I decided to move out of this property and move in with my kids. Am I just like out of luck on all this money I put into the property, or do I get my option fee back? And we said, so sorry, you don't get your option fee back. And I'm sorry, you don't get any credit for the repairs you did. Mm-hmm. So what might have been a nasty story, and I've got some nasty stories we can get into as well. What might have been a nasty story ends up being really great because we always have a war chest, what I call a war chest, that makes sure that I have money set aside from my option fee so that when my tenant does move out or we have to evict somebody or do some repairs, we've got money sitting there, mm-hmm. right?
Ready to go.
We make 1 month's payment on the mortgage because we bought this house sub 2. We bought it sub 2. We put it out on a lease option. I'm going to take part of that 10 grand we took up front, pay the first, make that next month's payment, and go get another option tenant to give me another $6,000 to $10,000 to move into that property. And then I'm going to give them the option fee, which you guys already know the market has appreciated in the last 6 months, some crazy amount. So now I'm going to probably add another $30,000 to $40,000 to the purchase price on the option. Like, guys, even bad things that happen in creative financing, if you do it right, can actually end up in your favor. Don't you guys agree?
I totally agree. I say it all the time. I know we don't do this, but I know guys who do what we do, right? Either sell a land contract or lease option, and they're hoping that they move out in 6 months to a year. That's their whole business model, right? They get the deposit, right? They let them go in there, they fix it up, like your end buyer fix it up themselves. They have to move out or default, and then they take it back and do it all over again, right? I mean, these are some guys' business models of what they do. Me personally, I don't want the house back, but I've had the same situation where, we sold a house 6 months later, right? The guy wanted to move to a different house. In this situation, we found the guy another land contract. So we got a new down payment on another house that we had.
Wow.
Right? And then we sold the other one for 10 grand more than we sold it before. So like, and I tell them the worst that can happen is you get the house back, but then you can do it all over again, so.
Dude, it's so great.
It's the private lender mentality, guys. When I have 200 grand to be able to fund, I want that to come back and flip a couple times in the next 12 months because I keep charging points on it.
Yeah.
So good. There's a guy I know, he's over in your guys' neck of the woods. He's over in Orlando, and his license plate says loan to own. And I'm like, yo, what does that mean? He's like, yo, I'm seller financing ultimately just to get these houses back. So I don't do a lot of seller financing. We probably, we're averaging right now, we're acquiring 6 to 8 properties a month in terms of long-term hold, which, guys, like, that doesn't maybe sound like a lot, but you're adding 72 to 80 properties to your portfolio every year is massive. And the here's what's crazy about it. Even if I never lived on the cash flow, even if I never lived on the deposits or any of that kind of stuff, just holding these properties and having my tenants pay them down, ultimately, if I acquire 50 properties a year, think about this, and this is like maybe way far out of reach for most people. Let's go down to 5. If you acquire 5 properties at the average medium house or medium sales price in Phoenix at like $250 every year for 10 years, you're going to have 50 properties that ultimately end up getting paid off by your tenants. Guys, we're talking $20-30 million with taking appreciation, depreciation, cash flow, and all this stuff into consideration. $50 million for 10 years of work. Like, you're richer than most NBA players. You know what I'm saying? Yep. And it's crazy you can do this as a side hustle.
Yeah. You definitely can. I mean, that's and what you said is attainable. I mean, 5 is attainable, right? Like you said 6 and 8 is not a lot. Now, we do know that is a lot, but some people listen and they hear these people who say, oh, 15, 20, 25 homes, but 6 to 8 homes is a lot. We're doing about 5 to 6, 5 to 6 homes a month on land contract. And it's the same exact goal. I mean, we're doing the same exact goal. We want the cash flow to come in, right? We're getting some paid down. We have a payoff coming next month on a 3 unit that we did a land contract in February, and the guy's paying us off next month.
That's so fast, dude. That's so
grand on the payoff. Make 50 grand on the payoff. Plus,
I just got the one on today from McAllen Avenue in in Muskegon,
Michigan. That's the one that I did. I got a payoff for that Kevin got today.
So what are your guys' reps doing? Are they going out and selling the properties, or are they going and actually securing financing and refinancing you out at a lower rate?
Well, let's talk about the one Kevin just showed the check for. So me and Kevin I bought that home in Michigan, last year, right? Like last June. I think I bought it last June, right? We sold it on a land contract as is, didn't touch it. Kevin did the private financing for it, sold it to the end buyer on land contract. He fixed it up and then he flipped it. So his closing closed yesterday, right? So his closing closed yesterday.
I think it was about 15 months.
About 15 months. Yeah. Because it was June, it's August. It was about 15 months that it took for that to come back, right? So that was one where my end buyer actually flipped it. The one that's happening next month, right? This is a 3-unit plus a auto body shop that I picked up for $42,000, right? A 3-unit apartment and an auto body shop on the same parcel, picked it up for $42,000. We sold it for $110 with 15 down on contract as is. Didn't touch it. we made $15,000 up front. He's refinancing it. He told me, and actually when we talked initially, I said, look, if you can refinance it out within 6 months, I'll give you a $10,000 discount on your payoff, right? I told him that up front. And so he came back to me last month like, hey, I'm refinancing it. You're going to still honor that discount? I said, sure. If you're going to refinance it out by the end of September, we'll honor a discount. So we're going to get, a $95,000 payoff. Well, $85,000 payoff, right? And make about 40 grand plus the 15 we already made, like a 6-month period, and that's from buying a house as is and locking up and starting a land contract.
It's so great. So let's give some people some horror stories. I've got one. I actually helped somebody. This is back in January of this year. Okay. I had this guy that was watching all my free content. This is before I was educating. This is before I had a mentorship program. I had this guy reach out to me on Instagram. He goes, man, I was in your creative finance Facebook group. I was taking action. I bought this property and I screwed up the insurance. And now the due on sale clause just got called on me. I don't know what to do.
Yeah. No,
and I'm like, oh, okay.
Why did it get called? Because I get this call every day. People are so afraid of due on sale clause, right? You said why I got called, but I don't know if people heard that. What's the reason why I got called?
I would say here's the top. I'll tell you the reason why that one got called, and I'll tell you like the top 3 reasons why I see due on sale clause get called. Because you'll get a lot of guys that are inexperienced in creative finance, and they'll say, oh, due on sale clause never get called. They do get called. They're very rare, but they do get called. And when they do get called, you just need to know how to handle them, which is what I'm happy to talk about today, and how I solved this guy's problem. So the way it got here's what happened. He did not educate his seller. on keeping the insurance in place. So there's two methods of thought. Okay. The method number one is I keep the seller's insurance in place and I put my name on the as an added, additional insured. I keep that same policy in place, during the duration of whatever I end up doing with it. I rent it out, or I, end up doing what I call a subtail, where I buy it subject to, and I take it retail, just doing a fix and flip and put it on the market. Okay, so that's method number one. Method number two is once I close escrow, I then call my insurance agent, have him create a new policy, and then pull the old policy out and basically switch it so that the bank is aware of the change and everybody is on the up and up and exactly what happens. There's some mechanics behind the scenes on that, but we won't go into that today. So this guy, he doesn't tell the seller anything about insurance because he didn't know what he was doing, which is fine, right? Taking action, I think, is the better way to go. So what happens is they close escrow. He has the property. He's got it rented out. And what he ended up doing is getting a call from the bank saying, hey, we're accelerating this note, which essentially means we're calling the due on sell, right? Which means, for anybody that's brand new to this, it means, hey, we found out you transferred ownership here and we're not happy about it. The person who originally had the mortgage in their name is no longer the owner, and now we want that money back. Typically it happens with smaller banks, and in this situation, it was a small bank. Mm-hmm. So get on the phone. The guy freaks out. What am I going to do? I'm going to lose this whole deal. And the seller's going to get foreclosed on, What happened? Here's what happened. The seller canceled their insurance because they were not educated on the fact that the insurance policy needed to stay in place. They thought, oh, well, I'm not the owner anymore, so I'm going to call the insurance company, cancel it because I see these emails flying back and forth and it's annoying me. So I'm just going to call and cancel my insurance policy. So what happens, Jory, when I cancel my insurance policy? What happens? Who gets notified? What does that look like?
The lender gets notified. Whoever the lender is, like the first lien is, if it's us on a land contract with Kevin doing private money or conventional, they say, hey, this house is no longer insured.
Right. So the bank gets notified that the seller canceled the insurance. The guy who put the subject to deal together had no idea he needed to either educate the seller on keeping the insurance policy long term and maybe downgrading it from a homeowner policy to a landlord policy, or he wasn't educated on the fact that he should have just replaced the insurance policy with a brand new one. So he calls me up. I'm going to lose this deal. I'm going to lose this deal. I'm going to lose this deal. I go, bro, are you kidding me? Like, this is such an easy solution. Mm-hmm. Okay. This is an easy solution to it. So this is what I did. This is before I was educating. I wouldn't do this now because I basically maybe have one of my students help the guy. So I told the guy, I said, hey, if you cut me in on the deal, if you make me part owner, that'll be how you pay me for solving this problem for you. So I currently have half ownership of this property, and this is what I did. I called the bank and I said, hey, we're the owners of the property. Obviously, you can see, we have title, we have deed, we control the property, and all we're doing is renting it out. And I just want to understand. I want you to understand what we're doing is not malicious, not we have no ill will towards you guys at all. We want to just make the payments. The bank owner gets on the phone with me. It's a small bank. They only have 6 branches. Uh-huh. The bank owner gets on the phone with me. He goes, look, since my father created this bank, it has always been our policy. It's just a policy that anytime there's a transfer of ownership and the note doesn't get paid off or the mortgage doesn't get paid off in that transfer of ownership, it's standard policy. We accelerate the note and we call it due. And I said, okay, there's no talking you out of it. He says, no. And I go, okay, well, what would be your suggestion on how to handle this? And I know how to handle it.
Yeah.
But I'm not about to educate the guy and make him feel like he doesn't know what he's doing and try, So what I did is I asked the bank owner, I said, what would you suggest if you were in my position? I gave the seller a down payment. We paid closing costs. We have a lot of costs involved in this deal. What would you suggest before I give you some ideas to see if my ideas would work? And he goes, I don't know. Probably what I would do is I would just deed the property back to the owner and I would just buy it on an agreement for sale. Yeah.
Hey, that sounds awesome to me.
And I'm sitting here thinking, I'm sitting here thinking, man, I've been doing this for years. I've never had a bank owner tell me exactly how to overcome their own due on sale clause.
I mean, at Pace, that's what I do all the time.
Right.
They can't trigger due on sale clause. There's no transfer to deed, you know?
Right. So I go, anything else, right? So I'm looking for like any strategies, anything that maybe I don't know about. And so he goes, well, you know, I have had some more seasoned investors. They've bought that they deed the property back to the homeowner. So check this out. This is a really interesting strategy. I'm now utilizing this when I'm fearful of the due on sale clause. So you deed the property back to the homeowner. Okay. And in this situation, we ended up paying the homeowner $200 for the hassle. Okay. So we deed the property back to the homeowner, and he has title, he has deed, and I called the branch manager, and this was his suggestion. I'll tell you what we did. So his suggestion was, well, I've had other people do this where they deed the property back to the owner and then they acquire it on a long-term lease option, and the option price is the mortgage balance after 20 years.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, so essentially it's an agreement for sale, basically.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's what we did. I said, look, I've never done that. So what we structured, and we went through title on this one because I wanted to make sure it was the first time I'd done it this way. I did a automatic renewing lease option for 15 years. So it automatically renews every 15 years. I don't have to do anything because there's legalities with how long you can do a lease option. So I did an automatic renewal of a lease option for 15 years, and my option price is the price of the mortgage balance after 15 years.
Got it. And the bank told you to do it this way.
The bank told me exactly what to do.
They told you exactly what to do to get around.
Right. So then I call the bank and I go, hey, we've gotten everything transferred. Is this okay that we did the paperwork this way? We're going through this title company. He says, oh man, that's great. That's amazing. He asked me for a set of my closing docs so he could suggest other people do it that way in the future.
Wow.
At least I was asking Pace if you had to pay closing costs all over again.
Yes, I did. So could I have skirted the closing costs? The answer is yes, I could have. But what I really wanted in that situation is I'm like Jory and Kevin. I like to delegate as much as I can. So for me, I think we ended up paying $1,800 in closing costs. I primarily wanted to make sure everything was done properly and it was insured properly because I'd never done a 15-year renewed lease option with an option to buy at the mortgage balance at the end of 15 years. And then I also wanted the bank to feel comfortable that I got a title policy on the paperwork. And so when I sent everything into the bank and they canceled the due on sale clause, I wanted to make sure I could build some rapport and some credibility with that bank owner. So I went through title, and then I also went through title. I had the escrow company actually record my lease option against the property just in case I ever have an issue in the future with transfer of ownership at the end of 15 years.
Wow. That's huge.
Pace, you mentioned earlier that you keep a war chest for each one of these kind of deals. Is there like a formula in your head that you always have for every single property?
You know, it's an interesting concept because I'm not a big spreadsheet or formula guy. I don't know how everybody else is. I'm a runner and gunner. And so for me, it's if it's in a nice part of town and I'm doing a lease option on my exit, it's a lease option. I don't really feel like I need to have a really big war chest. But if it's in a bad part of town and I'm doing a rental, then I feel like my war chest needs to be amplified, right? So let's go through a deal I'm doing right now. We just bought a deal on Des Moines. I just shared all my contract paperwork with my students, like showing them, here's exactly the deal. Here's what it looks like. Check this out. A couple of things. And I'm sorry, I'm dominating this conversation because I want to hear some more stories from you guys.
They hear us every week, brother. Trust me.
So I have the seller last week. If you guys go back to my Instagram, it's a picture of the sellers throwing up the deuce as well. My subject to logo, she's throwing it up. For 6 months, she was messed around with real estate agents coming in saying, oh, you got to spend 20. You guys know the drill. You guys run into this too.
Yeah.
You got to spend 20 grand and clean up the property. And then I can sell it for obviously a fictitious amount because they're trying to get the listing. And then they found out, the seller's like, well, I found out even after I spend this money, I still got to come out of pocket again when I close escrow because I don't have any equity in the deal. But the agent's not telling me the truth. They're just trying to get a listing agreement. So they decided to spend their time talking to wholesalers for those 4 or 5 months. They got into 12 wholesale contracts, which all 12 wholesalers failed to finalize the transaction. And so when the time came for my team to run into this lady, she was like, "There's no way you can help me."
Yeah, she was done.
Have you guys ran into sellers that are like, "Yo, nobody else can help me"? What makes you think you can help me?
Oh yeah, and especially it's more and more nowadays too. I mean, you have sellers, they're all defensive, right? They've been burned 3 or 4 times already, and no one's offered them a creative option, right? They just tried to wholesale their house, so they think it's all done. And they're ready to give your house away.
I feel like the wholesalers are doing our job for us. They're beating these sellers up before we even come in the door.
They definitely are. Thank you.
Thanks, wholesalers. So, look, I know Jordan, Kevin, and myself, we all wholesale as well. Last month, we did 8 wholesale deals. We probably did $120,000, $130,000 in wholesale, assignment fees. But the reality, guys, is with your same flow of leads, you can double, triple, or quadruple your conversion rate utilizing, the acquisition strategy of creative finance. So anyway, this is what happens with the lady. So I go in, I record the whole conversation with her. She's like, "There's no way you can help me. It's impossible for you to help me. Everybody else has already told me no." We basically have abandoned the thought process of ever getting out of this house. And I'm like, if this is not a lap deal, a deal that just falls in your lap, I don't know what else is. I don't even have to tell you you're never even gonna have any objection to creative finance, right? You're not gonna have any objection. So I go through, we buy the house sub 2. She's getting $26,000 in cash. The house needs $15,000 in renovation, and I need $3,000 in closing costs. So I'm raising about, I'm raising about $45,000 in private money. Okay. Mm-hmm. That private money will go in second position at 8% interest only. My payment on that will be like $300 a month. Okay. Mm-hmm. My acquisition cost is full retail. We paid full retail for this house. Okay. We paid full retail for it. We are, her payment, her PITI is $930 a month. And the rent rate in that neighborhood is $2,200.
Woo!
I mean, that's a home run.
It's a home run.
Yeah. Right? $1,000 in cash flow.
Yeah.
It's $1,000 in cash flow. And then after, depending on who you are, we manage our own properties. But if you have a management company and you want to put money aside for a war chest, and I'll get into Kevin's ultimate question, that $1,000. So let's break that down. I've got $900 in a first, my PITI. So it's principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Then I've got $300 a month in a private lender giving me that, that I raised that $40,000+ for. Mm-hmm. So I'm all in $1,200. Let's just call it $1,300. I'm in $1,300. So I've got $900 in gross income coming in on this property. I'm going to look at that and I'm going to cut that in half. I'm going to take 50% of that, put it towards vacancy, repairs, and any management that I might have to go along the way. And that just goes into a bank account, goes into a bank account, goes into a bank account. That builds my, what we call war chest, right? You guys have war chests as well. I don't know if you call them war chests or reserve or whatever. Yeah. So same thing, just a different word, right? So I will net cash flow on that deal $450 a month on a deal that nobody else could do, on a deal that I have $0 in, and my tenant will pay down my mortgage for me, right? So I could wrap it, right? I could wrap it. And I think the strategy of a wrap would be really good here, because what you guys do is that your wrap buyers, a lot of times, and I'd be curious to hear about how often this happens, your wrap buyers, Jory and Kevin, are probably bringing the majority of your down payments or your entry fee to the table, right? Are your wrap buyers covering your entry fee for the most part?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Plus some, right? We usually make some money on that. Yeah.
Love it. So you guys are doing what I teach a lot, but I don't do a lot of seller financing because I like to keep my stuff long term and I don't mind the management. The advantage of your guys' strategies, you have a lot less management on your deals and you have a lot more net cash flow, and you don't need as much reserves as somebody that's doing as a rental, right?
Correct.
Definitely.
100%.
I mean, and we're using our down payments as far as they're like a salary too, right? So our down payments are salary, right? Their operating costs, all that, because again, that's actual profit coming in, realized right there.
It's like a wholesale fee and monthly rental cash flow mixed together without any of the fixing toilets.
It's
Yeah.
almost like when you hear about this and people say this out loud, the first thing when you're like a wholesaler, you're thinking, number one, bullshit. There's no way. I'm working my guts out. I'm trying to get all these deals done. There's no way that this happens. These guys they're telling me they're solving problems nobody else can solve. They're paying prices nobody else can pay. They're getting paid up front, and they're keeping cash flow long term with very little maintenance. How is that even possible? It is insane what you guys and other creative investors like myself are able to do. And I feel like wholesalers that are not implementing this strategy, guys, like how many wholesalers you know are like trying to get that deal to their first deal and they just can't make it happen. Then the second somebody learns creative finance, they're like, dude, I got my first deal. It was a sub 2.
Yeah, and then they're getting a fee, plus you're creating some generational wealth and cash flow for themselves at the same time. So me and Kevin always say it's the best of both worlds, right? And as soon as you learn it, why would you just wholesale? Like, why would you just wholesale? I had a meeting with my partner in Michigan last week about, why we would ever wholesale a deal again, because we have private money on the side that can buy everything, right? We have, we get seller finance terms. Like, why would we wholesale? We kind of keep with a number. If we can get this much on our wholesale fee, we'll look at it. But besides that, there's really no reason to wholesale unless we just don't want that property. It's kind of like what Jimmy Napier said. He wouldn't do a seller finance deal unless he wanted to have that property when he came back, right? So there are some properties that I don't want ever. Ever
is that Jory? Is that based on geographics in terms of like that's outside of my zone? Like I want to be able to visit my properties. Like what is that? What's your determination on what you don't want?
I don't visit any properties, so geography means nothing. It's more like, some properties just need so much work that I know if I get it back, it's going to cost me a lot of headaches, right? Like,
right.
I have a house now that a guy gave us the house. He gave us 3 properties. Well, we paid for 3 properties, right? The third property he made us take. Like he wouldn't let us buy the other 2 without the third one. That third one, I went to Harrisburg a couple months ago, checked on it. Half the brick wall fell down. So like I don't really want that property, but it was we made money off of taking that property.
Right.
So we took it. But we wholesale one similar to like that last month. That I just don't want to have this property back because the headaches of dealing with the city and fixing it up aren't worth the hassle.
Right.
So if that happens, we'll just wholesale it off. But besides that, we're trying to seller finance every single deal we can.
Yeah. The war chest comes in if in those wraps. If that person misses a payment, we still need to make the payment to the seller financing. So we're still collecting reserves just for that specific situation. And you got to take into consideration the cost of if we have to execute a foreclosure to get that person out and redo it again. That's kind of the numbers that we're playing with on those type of deals.
I've got a foreclosure going on right now with one of my first wraps I ever did like 7 years ago. And it's not even, she's not even behind on her payments. You know what she is? This is before I was like using a servicing company to handle all this stuff. Now I have a servicing company to take care of all this. But this lady is late on her payment like clockwork. Every month she's 2 weeks late. So she has $800 in late fees, and I'm like so sick of it. And she has an entitled attitude. So I told her in January, if you don't catch up this $800 in late fees, I'm foreclosing on you only because of your late fees. Uh-huh. And so I've been patient with her, and she just kind of has this like, screw you, you're not going to do anything to me type of mentality. So I call the trustee. I hire the trustee. We send her a foreclosure notice. Next thing you know, 3 days later, I got a check for $800 for that stuff. So your wrap buyers really don't want to buy, or the buyers that are buying from, on your land contracts, they don't want to lose their big deposit. And that's the advantage of selling on seller finance is you guys are asking for significant deposits up front.
Yeah, the deposit, and then they're improving the property too, right? So you put a deposit of $10,000, $15,000 down, and then you're actually putting sweat equity and money into fixing the house up, right? I mean, to me, that's two huge factors why they don't want to lose the property. They don't want to lose it, so they'll do everything in their power to keep it.
Yeah, pride of ownership is insane when you're doing lease options and wraps, right? So it's crazy the difference between rentals. So the only time I will do a rental, so let's look at like the last 10 deals I did. The last 10 deals I did, one was a rental, one was a wrap. So I'm probably doing 10% of my deals I'm selling on seller finance, 10% of my deals I'm doing rentals. The other 9 are lease options. The reason for that primarily for me is lease option tenants are like 5 upgrades from a rental tenant. because they actually are like, look, I'm aspiring to be a homeowner. I will actually take this house in as is condition. I will fix it up so that when I'm ready to refinance it, the bank comes in, does an appraisal. The house is actually in appraisal worthy condition, so that I can go out and get my own funding in 5 years, right? So that's one, is that I have way less maintenance. Two, I get the tax benefits of that. Like, so I'm looking at how much money that we made in 2019, 2020, and 2021 is looking like pretty big with some of the projects that we're working on. And I'm talking to my CPA. I'm like, look, I don't want to pay any taxes. Any. I like, how do I become Mitt Romney? Like, I want to pay no taxes, guys. And I want to do it legally. And his thing is like, well, you're already on the right path. You just need to buy, before the end of the year, you need to buy 13 more properties. If you buy those 13 properties, I can get you almost to a 0% federal tax income rate. That is the craziest thing, is that you can learn. People go, I want to make more money. I want to make more money. Yeah. Okay. Your CPA is going to teach you the fastest way to make more money is to keep what you're already earning.
Yeah. No, last year we bought a few rentals, and I've always said you have to buy some few rentals. You know, when I was just wholesaling, you definitely have to buy some few rentals because your wholesale fees are taxed super high. So I would go buy a property right here and put those wholesale fees into that property and write off as a tax write-off. So that is a great point you just made. I had a question about lease options though. Are you able to have your end buyers pay taxes and insurance for the property?
Yeah, my end buyers pay a payment to me. They don't know what that payment is actually.
Yeah, they're just paying a full rental payment.
Yeah, and their payment actually doesn't come to me. Years ago, I was like running around collecting things like an idiot. And now we just go through Westar, which is the name of the servicing company we go through. And Westar collects all those payments. They enforce the late fees. They enforce all that communication. Then they send us a report every single month. So the servicing company, for people that don't know how this works, obviously Jory and Kevin are like ninjas as well on this stuff, black belt status. They don't need to know this, but hopefully this helps somebody watching, is that my tenant makes a payment to Westar, and then Westar makes my mortgage payment for me. They make the HOA payment, and if the taxes and insurance are outside of the mortgage payment, then they make that payment as well. Mm-hmm. And then my servicing company distributes the remaining balance to me as my cash flow, right? Yeah. And then internally, we have 5 bank accounts for every single one of our companies, and we base those 5 bank accounts off of the book Profit First. Mm-hmm. So if anybody hasn't read the book Profit First, we have like a tax account and all that kind of stuff. It's a very, very good book if anybody hasn't read it. But here's what's interesting about servicing. My average cost of servicing is $24 a month per property.
Yeah, it's very, very low.
It's stupid. Like, who has time to do all that work for freaking not saving $24?
Yeah, it's very, very low. What we do with our land contracts are, we like to be around $50 below rent, right? So we want to get our PI, TI, S being the servicing, right? So principal, interest, tax, insurance, and servicing, all within that $50 below what they would pay for rent for that property. That's kind of how we base the payment to our end buyer.
Love that. Are you guys, I remember listening to you, or maybe you and I were having a conversation when you were out here in Phoenix, we were cruising around. I think you guys self-service, or you have an in-house servicing company.
We did. We don't anymore. We did.
What are you guys doing right now with servicing? Are you guys transitioning?
Yeah, we're transitioning them all to a servicing company. Yep. I'm filling out the tape right now. We got about 25 we're sending all over at once so that all the new ones can go over there. Because we were doing that, but like now we're getting too many where, just like you said, $24. Like, it's stupid not to do that,
And Westar will do lease option servicing as well.
They'll do it all. Yeah, they're doing everything, and they're nationwide. So I checked them out. Jory, Rochelle, my transaction coordinator. You guys have chatted a few times.
Awesome. Yep.
She'll set up the servicing. This is a stupid thing I was doing, is when I was going through any title company, depending on like if I bought a wholesale, if a wholesaler was like, yo, I got a deal, I got to cancel on the seller, which happens a lot. Do you want to try and come in and revive this deal? They already had that deal open with the title company. So I'd go, all right, I'd go to the seller, I'd convert them to a wholesale deal, to create a finance deal on behalf of that wholesaler. So they didn't have to have that conversation. And then I would pay the assignment fee to a wholesaler, even on a deal that was falling apart, which is crazy. And then I would just go through their title company, because I didn't want to rock the boat in terms of like the title company talking to the seller. And for a while, I was listening to the title companies. They'd say, oh, just use our servicing company. Next thing you know, I've got like 12 servicing companies servicing over 100 properties. And I'm sitting here saying, oh my gosh, my life is a nightmare. So we transitioned. It took us about 6 months. We transitioned everything over. We had Rochelle do it because it was a lot of work. We had Rochelle transition everything over to Westar. And we're super happy with Westar. They're great.
Got it.
We got Darius chiming in, and this is exactly what Jory. This is the same strategy. He's saying in Louisiana, they do bond for deed, which allows to purchase a property without transferring the title until the seller's mortgage is paid in full, without worrying about the due on sale clause, and it still allows the tax benefits as any regular purchase of a property.
Yeah. Contract for deed is a general term used across the country, but like, land contract, agreement for sale. First time I heard bond for deed, but those are all the same exact. I just call them like a lease option on steroids pretty much, right? And
yes.
It's the same as our game pretty much. And we do ours 25, 30 years out because I'm like, I want cash flow. So we don't do any balloons to our end buyers. I'll do 30 years all out on all of them. The payment makes sense, because you want the cash flow.
100%, dude.
We got a topic going on here in the chats, and I'm wondering if you've had a horror story with the lease options. He's asking here if the actual option that people pay to get this lease to buy contract doesn't go towards the down payment. So if we could clarify that, and have you ever had a misunderstanding?
Hell
people
yes.
Think?
Yes, that's what a great question. Thanks for asking that question. So yes, we never call the option fee a down payment, because the first time I ever did a lease options years ago, we called it a down payment. And what happened is it was a 2-year lease option. At the end of 2 years, they couldn't qualify for financing for whatever reason. And I said, all right, well, you got to get out of the property, or, I'm going to sell the house or whatever. Or we can extend and you can give me another down payment. They're like, what do you mean down payment? What do you mean another down payment? You're already financing me. You're the bank. I was told this is a down payment. So they actually went to an attorney. They sued me because they claimed that I inferred ownership, was the words they used. I inferred ownership by using the word down payment. So even though my option agreement was very clear, and I always have 2 agreements, I have a lease, right? It's just like a rental. And then I have an option contract. These are 2 different things. People don't realize these are 2 different contracts. Okay. So on my option agreement, they have the option to buy the property, and they're buying that option with an option fee. That's a non-refundable fee they are buying this option with. And if they do not have the ability to secure their own funding at the end of 5 years, which is my traditional option life, they have 3 options. Either A, extend the option agreement with me and have a higher option price and give me another $7,500, which is my average option fee. 2, they can move out of the property. Or 3, which is one that I don't actually educate my sellers on, my buyers on, but they have it in the contract. They technically have the right to sell the property on the open market, and that would be technically looked at as an execution of their option. But none of them will actually go do that. They don't think that way, right? One of the things that I teach all my students is I say rule number 2 to creative financing is never put your brain in somebody else's head. So don't think that your option buyers know what the hell their options are at the end. Put it in your contract, make it clear. Anyway, back to your question. So their option fee, Kevin, does never, ever, ever, ever go towards the purchase of the property. They're 2 separate contracts, and the second you intermingle those, you're running into a nightmare. So what ultimately happened with that buyer that sued me is I ended up having to give their option fee back, and then I think I ended up having to pay their attorney's fees, which were $3,000, to make it go away. So it was a lesson learned that unfortunately I had to go through that. I actually was paying somebody that was like a creative finance guru who I found out had not done a creative finance deal in over 10 years. He was the one that I used the paperwork with and used his vernacular that got me in that sticky situation. And when I asked him how to solve the problem, he couldn't give me a solid answer. He was skirting the question. I ended up having to hire a real estate attorney that helped me get through that.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think what I want our listeners to understand, because sometimes they have a tough time wrapping their mindset of these concepts, people will pay that option fee all day, every day. It's no different when people are trying to get private money and they pay points on top just to be able to get the financing, just to be able to get the deal. People want that house. They don't want you to turn around and sell it the day of tomorrow. So they will pay a fee to basically lock down that opportunity all day, every day.
Yeah,
Definitely.
it's a really good point. I don't think a lot of people talk about this enough. Why does an option buyer actually pay for an option fee? Why would they be willing to do that? Right. So Maurice brings up a good point. He says, is a lease option and a rent to own the same thing? Yes, they are considered the same thing, except I never say that ever when I'm advertising, because you see what you're doing is you're inferring ownership. You're saying this is a rent to own program. So unless you're willing to take part of their rent and pay it towards the mortgage, which I think is a stupid strategy because you're giving away so much, then you don't want to call it a rent to own. You want to call it a lease with an option to buy. That's what it is. So why would somebody do an option purchase? The reason why that I'll give you 3 reasons why. Number one, people want to have the pride of ownership. They want to feel like this is going to be my house once I fix my situation. They want to have something to shoot for, and they want to know that their landlord's not going to just sell the property out from underneath them when the rent rates go skyrocketing, right? So that's number one. Number two is they want to be able to improve the property as well. They want to be able to change things, paint things. Whereas in a traditional rental, it's like, don't do anything to this property unless you're willing to make it go back to the way it was. Otherwise, I'm going to take your security deposit. And the third reason, which I think is actually the most important, is that people, especially my lease option buyers, they want to have a longer lease life with an option to buy because they want to actually establish roots in the community, right? So we give them 5 years. They want to be close to their job, close to where their kids are going to school. They want to have their kids, make friends in the neighborhood without feeling like, hey, this is just a rental where my landlord could choose not to sell the property to me, or he could choose to sell the house on the open market. And I'd have to go now pay moving expenses and, security deposits again to go find another rental where my kids have just established themselves here and I established myself at a job. So a lease option gives them a longer time frame to fix whatever's going on in their life, to give themselves the ability to buy the property at a locked in price in the future. That is why people are willing to do lease options instead of just doing a traditional rental.
Exactly.
Are you freezing the amount of monthly rent during the time period, or do you have the ability to raise it?
I personally freeze it because I feel like that justifies a higher option fee. Right.
Okay.
So my average option fee is between $7,500 and $10,000 just for purchasing the option. Does the option fee go towards the purchase of the house? No. Does any of my payments on the rental go towards the mortgage? Absolutely not. Here's another statistic. You guys don't do as many lease options, but I'm sure you probably know the statistics. You guys do more wraps than I do. Let me ask you a question. What do you guys think is the statistic of people who actually execute the option? If you had 10 people give me $7,500, you fast forward 5 years later, all 10 people's option is now due. They either have to refinance me out or they have to sell the property. How many of those people, what percentage are actually executing that option?
I'd say 30%.
That's right on. I used to think it's 50-60%, but it is actually 70 to 80% of people don't execute.
The reason why I said that is because on average, the average homeowner doesn't stay in their house past 5 years. It's like, I think it said like on average, right? You get past 5 years on your loan before you either sell it or
refi
or refinance, move out of it, right? So it doesn't go past 5 years. Same with land contracts. They usually don't go that far past there before it's either sold, refied, or they move out. So
what's interesting about this? This is what's crazy. Go back to this and what Jory's talking about. These people, so like this lady in my Phoenix property, the lease option tenant that just moved out, she gave us $6,000 as security. I have this screenshot from the seller saying, I gave $6,000. I put all this money into the thing. Is there any way I can get any of this money back? I checked my contract. She read the freaking contract. And in the contract, it states she has the ability to sell the house on the open market.
And
she actually, no. And the market since she bought the property from me, the
crazy,
house has
man.
appreciated $50,000 since she bought the property.
Wow.
It's
Yeah.
not even in their brain to
Yeah.
think this is what I should do. So right now, it's not my job. I already put in the paperwork, says you can execute the option by doing a sell on the open market and hiring a real estate agent. If you need a real estate agent, my wife can do it. Like all of that's in my option, right? She read the option to see if she could get her deposit back, but she completely ignored the fact that she has the ability to sell the house. So she just says, the keys are under the mat. The house is yours.
Yeah, it's the old cash for keys thing we used to do back in the day, right? They have the ease of being done with it is more, relaxing for them than having to go through a realtor and selling the house, which is crazy because that house probably would sell in a week. I mean, the market's on fire right now. She could have sold the house for a week, recouped their money back, but it's the lack of knowledge,
Darius is asking for your buyer's lease for 1 year and then automatic renews for 5 years with an option to buy within 5 years.
Yeah, so that depends on the state you're in, because if you go to like Texas has limitations on how long and how short you can do options. So you can be really tricky on how you structure your lease options. For me, our option goes 5 years solid in Arizona. Okay, so same thing in Florida. I don't have any. We have houses we own in Tampa and Orlando. I don't have any restrictions on my options there. In Texas, you do, and I don't know how it is in Louisiana. You might have options on how long you can do an option. So the way around that is to do maybe what Darius is suggesting. But for us, we don't do a renewing option at all on our 5-year option. You have 5 years to execute that option.
Got it.
We got Joseph asking, is the monthly payment for the lease option average, lower, or higher above rental market value?
This is an interesting thing because this is what I love about talking to Jory. And Jory and I are actually talking about putting a group of guys together, like guys and gals, probably 25 people or less that are high level ninja status in the creative financing realm, and just having like a boys and girls club of like a closed door creative finance mastermind. Not something like we're going to bring on students or anything like that. Like, hey, this is just for the operators. It's fun talking to Jory because Jory has different strategies than I do. His strategy, and Kevin, your strategy as well, is you want to be $50 under the average rent rate in that area. Guys, my lease options are $150 over my average rent rate in Phoenix, Arizona.
Wow.
So we have a couple that are 100. We have a couple that are over 200. But the average, the overwhelming majority is I comp it. So anybody wants to understand rent rate, you can go to Redfin, you can go to Realtor.com, Zillow.com. You can go to all these websites, and you can get a kind of a gut check, is what I call it, a gut check rent rate.
Yeah.
But if you really you're going to buy the property and execute it, you really need to comp it through the MLS. Okay. So we get the gut check. Hey, is this a deal? Great. If it's a deal, we move on to actually doing our full analytics. We go to MLS. We go, okay, rent rate in the area is 2,000. We then put it on the option we put it on the market as an option at 2,200, and we see how it is. If we don't get traction, we then lower it. But in Phoenix, people, number one, pride of ownership, and then two, our rent rate is skyrocketing in Phoenix, and actually just about everywhere. Aren't you guys seeing the rent rates just going up?
They are, and they'll keep going up too. We're about to have a land of renters, so it's going to keep going up.
My question to you, Jory and Kevin, is what are you guys doing? Like, have you ever sent it out on the market trying to get more than the average rent rate? And what was your experience in that put you in a mindset of like, hey, I want to get done with it fast and just get it sold? Or what are you guys thinking when you're doing that?
I was just talking to Jory about that right before the show, where I was saying we need to start marketing this on a grander scale because they fly so fast.
Yeah.
That now creating the same thing that's happening in the regular retail market, create this little auction style where it raises itself.
Right.
Yeah. I think with me, most of and this is how it differs, right? So the price I'm selling my land contracts for is going to be higher than retail price, right? Always, right? So I'm selling it as is, higher than probably what the ARV is retail price, right? So I get appreciation in there, and I try to get underneath the monthly payment. That's kind of my formula, right? So I get more than what I can sell it for an open market, but I'm getting a little bit less to the homeowner, so they feel good, because if they can rent for this amount in this neighborhood, they should be able to own the house a little bit underneath there, but the payment is more as far as the average sell price.
Yeah, and then you're also getting a larger windfall of cash if they do decide to either refinance you or sell you out. And you're essentially figuring out, okay, I'm going to pull this lever down, this lever goes up. I'm trying to figure out the right combination where the buyer feels like they're winning and I feel like I've won, especially in a long-term strategy. Dude, I love that. That's a really great thing for people to understand, is that there is no 100% right or wrong way to do this. It ultimately comes down to your own individual strategy.
It's an art, man. Creative financing is a true art, right? Like we all know, we do deals every day. That's like, oh, I never did it this way before in my life, right? You just kind of figure out how do you put that piece there and, draw this line there. And I mean, it's the funnest thing in the world to me. I love doing it.
Writing the terms real quick is like, what did we say what this was going to be again?
Exactly.
We're going to wrap it this way. All right. Are we? Is this compliant? Let's double check.
Yeah, 100%. That's exactly how stuff gets done. This question, Kevin, I appreciate you popping this question out, because I think this is something, the answer is both yes and no. Technically, can you do it? Absolutely. But his question is this: if you're a real estate agent, does that hinder you from doing lease options and any type of creative financing? Technically, no. But mentally, hell yes.
Yes. I was going to say that because, I'm a licensed broker, been a licensed agent since 2007.
Right.
And not to me mentally, but when I talk to another realtor about creative, like a land contract, here's the terms, they lose their mind. Well, how can you do it like that? Like, they have no idea how we're doing the things we do, right? So there's a mental block that's in your head if you only do it one way that cripples you. And a lot of realtors are getting crippled in this business because they won't think outside that box. They're losing a lot of money too.
It's interesting. So we have like Open Door, OfferPad, American Homes for Rent, a lot of these really, really big companies, Zillow, they're in Phoenix just dominating the iBuyer market, right? So I get to, rub shoulders with some of these guys, and they're saying, oh yeah, the real estate agent is a thing of the past. If you're going to be successful in this business, you need to be an investor agent. And what I mean by that is that you can be a traditional agent, but you need to be looking for these opportunities to fill in the gaps, because competition's fierce. If you're sticking to the traditional ways of being a traditional real estate agent, yes, you will be hindered from doing creative financing, because that is your mindset and you're only that.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, seeing opportunity is like a Jedi skill set I'm seeing in this game, because there's people that will look at the same exact deal and walk away from it all day, every day.
Isn't that crazy?
It is.
It's so crazy.
Me and C Train were talking about that, how we're predicting how a lot of the agents aren't going to be around because of those iBuyers. And, there's more wholesalers or investors like us who go straight to the seller, right? Offering way more options than the traditional realtor can right now.
Yeah. Brandon's asking, he's looking at cash flow markets. How important is historic growth over time, future growth, appreciation when picking a cash flow market?
That's probably primarily a Jory answer.
I love that question too, because I've come to the realization, right? So when I started getting in other markets, I was looking at these markets that hadn't appreciated a lot yet, right? Because we all know what happened during the 08 crash. The markets came down. And then, like, I was in Grand Rapids, right? I was buying houses in Grand Rapids for 10, 15 grand, like 2008, 9, 10. And then hedge funds came in and raised the prices up like crazy, right? Well, my mindset, this is going to be duplicated across the country because these hedge funds have to be able to make money. Pensions need to make money, and they're going to use housing, right? They're going to use rental properties. But there are still so many more. I was saying this yesterday. There are so many markets right now in the country that are still at such low prices right now. I mean, Pittsburgh, like all across the Midwest, Indiana, Ohio, all of the big cities, you find deals in the 30 grand all day long, right? So, like, and we don't care. Appreciation to me is like, what is that? I don't even look at it, right? When I'm doing a cash flow market, I can care less about appreciation. I'm selling a land contract. I'm already putting my appreciation into the price at the beginning of it. So the appreciation for the market doesn't really matter to me, right? Because again, if the homeowner who put this down payment down and fix the house up says, oh, my house isn't worth that, we'll just take it back and do it all over again because we bought it for 50% of the price today. So, in a true cash flow evaluation, appreciation to me is now looked upon. Now, there are people who come into a cash flow market, they want to buy it, rent it out for 3 years and sell it, right? And they're going to look for an appreciation value. But I'm looking for long-term cash flow, and appreciation is not even on my list of things I look at.
That's interesting. Again, this is why it's so fun to hang out with you guys, because I have a different mindset. I look at primarily, number one, I want to be in warm markets.
I want to live in war markets.
Yeah, I want to live in more war markets. So this is an interesting train of thought. So this $40,000 plus, it might end up being 45,000 that I'll raise from a private investor. I'm buying one deal with that 45 grand, right? That my entry fee, I tell people I have 7 parts to an entry fee. I teach my students, like, there's 7 parts to entering a deal you got to take into consideration. So my 45 grand takes care of all 7 of those items. So that I'm truly into that deal $0 out of pocket. That's my goal. Every single deal to be $0 out of pocket. So I could take that 45 grand, go to Canton, Ohio, and buy 2 houses.
Yep.
And then turn around and do seller financing on the back end. So that is a great conversation to have, is like, where's the better way, or where's the better place to deploy your capital, right?
Me and Kevin have that now, because Kevin does a lot of lending for me. He's looking at now where he's seeing now, like, hey, I can take this $100,000 that I would do on one house, or we could go buy 3 or 4.
Right.
3 or 4.
When he brings me $100,000 deal, I'm like, bro, we could do 3. Are you sure?
Right. 100%.
No one wants to buy my $100,000 deals anymore. I keep bringing these small ones.
What I would suggest for anybody that's paying attention is that, what's fun about this is that Jory has not figured it out. Kevin has not figured it out. Pace has not figured it out. We are figuring it out every single day. This is like an ongoing video game, right? It's like there's a new expansion pack that comes out every 6 months, right? And what I mean by that is that as we get bigger and better in this industry, our eyes are opened to bigger and better opportunities. If you're jumping into this industry, take the same path. Don't try and say, oh, I got to be up here with the big boys. Guys, take the same path. Wherever you are currently investing right now, start doing some deals. Okay, get those deals flowing. Don't say, oh, well, Pace and Jory and Kevin, they're sitting there talking about, I got to be in these markets. I got to do this, this, and this. Guys, do it in your backyard. Get comfortable with a few transactions, and then get comfortable with these types of conversations. Then you can start elevating your mindset. You see what's happening with these 2 boys is that they're having different conversations than they were having a year ago.
100%.
100%.
100%. Bill's asking, what would you guys do if you find an owner in Cali that owns 14 properties in Miami, but home numbers on the DNC list? All 14 homes owe taxes for 2 to 3 years.
Pace, tell him. I know what Pace would do.
I knock the door.
Exactly.
Guys, I'm telling you, and I don't know how you guys feel about this, because your marketing methods are a little bit different than mine. I'm telling you, the number one way I got deals in 2019 was knocking doors. The number one way. So we built a team. Our team goes out primarily going after foreclosures, tax delinquents, absentee owners. We'll leave notes or maybe call the neighbors or whatever. But guys, I hate promoting, so I'm not gonna. This is not a promotion. But download Go Knock app. Okay. Download Go Knock app. And if you guys listen to this in the future, I'll get Jory a code for it. GoKnock.com/Jory. And what that'll do is it'll give you 14 days free, plus you'll get like 50 skip traces for free. We use this app to go knock on people's door and set up a route and then communicate with these sellers on an individual basis that nobody else can get a hold of. So that's where I would go. Most of my creative financing deals are coming from foreclosures or people that are in distress. Okay. On seller finance, it's a little bit different, right? My subject twos are people in distress. My seller finance houses are people that almost are the opposite of distress, where they're just belligerent on what their asking price is. And I go, great. If I gave you full retail, would you give me 0% seller finance? Right. So what about you guys? What would you do, Jory, in that situation? Plus, where are most of your deals coming from right now?
I 100% with Door Knock, right? I mean, I was out there with you, Pace, when the Door Knock app was about to be getting done. Me, you, and Jesse were looking at it, so it's a great app. And I talk about this all the time. We're always talking about marketing strategies, right? Because we know everybody was cold calling, everybody's texting, right? The texting is getting kind of clogged. You can tell every day.
Oh yeah,
texting is getting harder to do, right? And I go back to when I got into real estate in 2007, and the market crashed, right? We would go knock on pre-foreclosure lists that we're going to go to the sheriff's sale the next week. We would go knock on the list, get the seller, tie it up, right, at a short sale price, and then we would go add a fee onto the HUD. We were wholesaling before we knew what wholesaling. We were doing this in 2007, 8, 9, didn't even know what wholesaling was, right? And we were knocking on doors, getting leads, So at the end of the day, you're gonna have to knock on doors. You're gonna have to pick up the phone and call, right? I've never stopped doing direct mail. We always do direct mail because direct mail, it's like a long-term thing where I might not get a call this week, but next month they might get a call from a postcard I sent 3 months ago, right?
Dude,
So
isn't that the craziest thing about direct mail?
yeah, you just keep it going. If you just keep it going, the phone will constantly ring.
What was the longest time that somebody got a letter until they called you? What was the longest gap?
I'll tell the story. We sold a deal probably in the last year, and this lady had a letter for about a year and a half, right? A year and a half from the first time we talked to her until we actually bought the deal.
And she filed your letter away. She was probably thinking like, oh, I'll call these guys when I'm ready. So she put in her filing cabinet.
Yep. And she said, hey, I had your letter here from a year and a half ago. I'm ready to sell my house, right? So like, and direct mail gets killed right now, but hey, guys, nobody's doing it. Like when I used to mail 3-4 years ago, it'd be 15 postcards at the house. Now it's like 2 or 3 cards at the house, right? So like you got to find something that nobody's doing. Everybody's texting, go knock on the door. No, people are afraid to knock on doors, right? So
I'm telling you, knocking doors, like Jory just said, knocking doors will become the new thing if it already isn't already starting to become that, because it requires very little cost, very, very little cost. The Go Knock app is really cool because it actually gives you all the foreclosures, tax delinquents, absentee owners, and vacant properties already preloaded in the app that you can have your team go out and start knocking doors or leaving sticky notes. This is an interesting conversation. So check this out. The door knocking ratio that we figured out is if you are knocking 100 doors, you're going to make 15 grand. You knock 100 doors, you're going to make 15 grand. Okay, so you're making basically $150 every single door you knock, because what happens is one deal comes from 100 doors. Okay, then if you're knocking 200 doors, what's going to happen is you're going to get 2 deals, plus you're going to get another deal. You're going to get a third deal from leaving sticky notes. Okay, so if I knock a door, they answer, I talk to them, great. If I knock a door, they don't answer, I leave a sticky note. Out of 200 properties, I'm going to get 2 deals from talking to people directly and a third deal from leaving sticky notes. At 200 doors, I'm going to make $45,000.
Wow.
Pace, when you knock on a door, for example, in Bill's situation, the owner lives in Cali, so he's essentially going to be talking to the tenants.
Right.
Are you offering an incentive or anything for the tenant to kind of broker that communication?
No, but that's a really great idea. I think that's a great idea. What we're doing is we say something like, hey, are you aware that the house you're renting is currently in default, or, there's issues? What are you guys' plans? Do you guys need help looking for a rental? And they're like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? I go, well, damn, like, what's your landlord's number? I'll call him and we'll see if we can get this straightened out.
Yeah.
But I do like the incentive option. That's probably a more enlightened way of doing it rather than being a fear monger.
With a fire. Well, this house is going down. What are you doing? Joseph is asking, what would be your number one way to find the buyer for your deals once you're using the Go Knock app and you're knocking on pre-foreclosures?
Bro, first off, the Go Knock app actually has buyers in the app as well, so you can find buyers in the app. But I'm going to tell you right now, do you guys have any issues finding buyers for your deals right now?
No. It's like people ask, it's the easiest thing in the world. It's to find buyers.
Tell your realtors, Facebook Marketplace, by Craigslist. By the time you're done there, you already got your phone blowing up.
Oh, blown up, like unbelievable, blown up, and it's to the point where you want to change your phone number. So here's the thing, I tell you, I put a YouTube video out. It wasn't like a produced video. It was a video where I was just on a whiteboard talking to one of my students about the one thing you need to worry about in this business. The one thing, okay? There's only one thing you need to worry about in this business, and that's generating a lead every single day. That's it, because everything else unfolds, right? You solve the problems as they come. You find a buyer. You reach out to somebody that might have a good buyer's list. Like you know what? Some of my students have actually worked with Jory and Kevin. Yeah. Right? Like my students go, yo, Pace doesn't have a buyer's list in this area. Hey, Jory, will you help me out? And Jory jumps in, helps get the deal done. Guys, you don't need a buyer's list to start in this business.
You don't.
You need leads to start in this business.
Yeah. Luke's asking Jory and us, I'm currently on my 3rd time reading through Becoming Your Own Banker. Tell me how you're using the concepts in the book towards your creative deals.
I don't know if anybody read that book yet besides me. Pace, you read any of the infinite banking stuff yet?
It's really good.
Yeah.
You know, here's the challenge I have with infinite banking, Jordan, and maybe you can help me solve this. I feel like I've just solved it. Is that everybody, right? It's just like when you're trying to learn real estate from somebody and you're like, okay, who's actually doing deals? Who's actually knows what they're talking about, or who's just trying to sell a course, right? So when you're trying to learn infinite banking and hire somebody to like manage your infinite banking for you, because it's not really something that you want to be doing on your own, in my opinion, especially like the insurance policies and all that kind of stuff. You want to find somebody that sets up your policy that is also investing in their own infinite banking policy, and they will show you behind the scenes. So what I've done is I say, look, if like Jory's somebody I would learn real estate from. Kevin is somebody I would learn real estate from. I would absolutely learn real estate from me and my team because we're practitioners of what we preach. But there's a lot of guys out there teaching, doing infinite banking that they don't even have any money to do their own infinite banking with.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you say, okay, great, show me your policies and how they work and how are they intertwined and how can I borrow and leverage this and avoid taxes here and all that kind of stuff. When you actually ask them to show you, they're like, oh, well, let me show you one of my other clients. I'm like, no. Are you not actually practicing what you preach? So I finally feel like I found one, and he was introduced to me by my CPA. So I'm moving all my stuff over to him. It's a Utah-based company, and when I'm done establishing it, I'll let everybody know about it. But the great thing about infinite banking is here I'll give you two benefits. You can borrow money from yourself, which is great, and that's really cool. And tax savings, because when you start getting to a higher level, the number one thing you start thinking about is like, oh damn, Kevin, you got that check in your office right there. You guys got off on a payoff deal. As a real business owner, you start thinking, well, how much of this is actually mine? Yeah. And that's a scary thought to think about.
Yeah. No, that's the key thing about it. And we had Chris Nagel on last week, and I've been talking to him about getting it set up. I've met him from Steve, so we're in the process of it. And the way that we're going to use it is we're going to put the money in there, take loans for our policy, go out and do our deals, right? So down payments on a seller finance deal, right? Seller payment on a sub 2 deal. The same way we do it right now, we're going to run it through there after we get it all set up. But we're still in the infinite stages too, like you are, Pace.
Yeah, it'll be curious. I'd love to set my policy, like finish setting up my policy, and then compare our policies. Like if we get that mastermind up and going, like say, hey, here's everything I'm doing. Here's the money I'm putting in. What are your guys' thoughts? And critique each other.
Yeah, definitely. We'll do that.
Yeah. I got a meeting with him on Thursday about that. Pace, I know we've taken up a bunch of your time. I want to end it with a scenario because I promised our viewers a couple episodes an update on this deal. So maybe we brainstorm live together and figure out if this is a deal or not. I got a deal right now where it is the person passed away. I have the connection with the daughter. It's been 7 or 8 years already. They actually now have squatters in the property. There was no equity in the deal. The last paper that they got was from the servicing company that sent it to them last year that said payoff would be $389. ARV is probably about $400,000. They have no idea what the condition of the property is. They don't have money to do the probate. They don't have money to get the squatters out of there. Plus, right now with coronavirus, we can't even get squatters out until September 1st down here in Miami. So she got hit up by somebody that said, hey, we'll take care of the probate. We'll take care of everything. Just give us an opportunity. And that's when she turned around and called me and said, I don't know if this is legit, but I know this is what you do. I trust you. If you want to take a look at it, see what you can do. So right now we talked to the probate attorney. We obviously can't get the squatters out. There's no equity, but I'm thinking this is a cash flow opportunity while this whole process goes once we get these people out. But I have no idea what the condition of the place is in, which obviously is going to dictate the move.
Love it. So one of my best deals I did this year came from Brent Daniels. Brent Daniels focuses on wholesale. He doesn't like fix and flip because it involves moving parts that a lot of people don't want to deal with, contractors, estimates, whatever. So anytime he gets a really tight deal, he sends it to me. So same scenario. Somebody passes away. There's no will. There's nothing. So obviously it's going to have to go through probate. It was on a Friday. It came in. I'm in the office. Jory's been to our office, so I've got Brent Daniels' office and my office touch each other.
Mm-hmm.
Brent Daniels' team comes into me, goes, "Hey, we've got this lead. It's really tight." And I go, "Perfect. Get me on the phone with her right now." And he goes, his name's Eric. And Eric goes, you want to call the seller right now? I go, "Yeah, I want to call the seller right now, bro. Let's call the seller right now. What are you talking about?" So I find myself 45 minutes later at the subject property meeting the inheritant, the person who is inheriting the estate is the daughter. And she says, "Dude, honestly, I don't even know what you're going to do here. We got squatters. The house needs to go through probate. We don't have the money for the probate, and the house needs a full renovation." And I go, "Look, you know what I want is I want the debt. I want the debt. You're afraid of the debt. I want that debt. It's like a 2.8% VA loan that your mom left behind. I want that debt, and I'll catch up the arrears. I'll pay for the probate attorney. What do you want for this property?" She's like, "Well, what are you talking about? Nobody else could solve this." She goes, "Well, what are you going to do?" I go, "I'm going to hire a probate attorney so that take into consideration when you tell me what you want for the property, that I got to pay for all these things." And right there on the hood of my little Prius in front of Brent Daniels' TTP students, I sign a contract with this lady where I give her $500 for the property. I take the house through probate, cost me $2,500. I now have approval to buy the house on subject to. I catch up the arrears. We kicked out the tenants. Now, this is pre-COVID, so you got a tenant situation that you got to deal with. It's going to cost you some money, obviously. But we took the deal over. We actually sold this one on seller finance. I acquired it. I was all in, subject to first mortgage, 44 grand. After my renovation, my probate, my closing costs, all that stuff, I'm into it 65. Even though the house's ARV 70 grand, we ended up selling it on a seller finance for 125 at 7% interest.
Wow.
So we literally just closed escrow on that like a week ago, and it was one of the better deals I've done. So I look at that deal and your deal, and I say I would go through the probate. I would give them what does the seller want in terms of cash, Kevin?
Right now, it's just, hey, I'm not doing anything with it. I know you. So if it's going to go somewhere, I'd rather it go to someone I know.
Yeah, I would go through the probate, especially people who have never gone through probate. So if some of your listeners are like, well, what does that mean? Guys, you need to build a relationship with a probate attorney regardless, because probate attorneys will give you massive referrals. In 2019, my bookkeeper told us we made a little over $400,000 in assignment fees from probate attorney referrals only.
Wow.
So in the process only of developing a relationship with a probate attorney, anybody that's listening, I would go hire that probate attorney, let them know, hey, I'll bring you more business in the future as long as you understand what I do for a living, and I'm always open to buying these types of deals as well. Hire the probate attorney, go through the process, learn a few things, which I already know you guys know how to do all this stuff, but this is just for the listeners. And I would take the deal. I would gamble. This is the crazy thing about me. I would gamble that $2,000 to $3,000 on the probate deal, even if it fell apart, just to develop a relationship with that probate attorney.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's good.
And then when you're talking with the lender, they obviously now know the person's deceased. So walk me through the negotiations of trying to maintain that, where they're not asking you to pay that off and then move on.
So in our situation, the arrears were only about $7,000. So it wasn't like this tremendous, catch up, or it wasn't like, is there a first position on this one that has like, what's the payoff on the first position? Not the payoff. What's the mortgage balance? I'm sorry.
They won't give the information until the probate is done. So all we know is that letter that came a year ago that says $389 to settle the complete amount. It might be obviously lower.
That's an interesting conversation, because you could be in a position where the mortgage might be $370 and they're only behind 19 grand, right? Or you could be in a position where the mortgage is $300 and they're behind 89 grand, and you got to come up with that 89 grand. So from my understanding, the way we've always done deals like this is we always catch up the arrears and we just buy the house sub 2. So we do a reinstatement, get the thing back in good standing. But without knowing that'd be a hard call, because in that situation, now either A, you got to sink 89 grand into one deal, which is what we already talked about earlier. Like, man, where could I deploy that 89 grand and get more bang for my buck? Or what if it's only 10 grand? It's probably not 10 grand, but it's probably 25. But if it's 25 grand, like that's a great deal, even if you're paying it at full retail.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
We got Zach asking, do you or can you pay a probate attorney a referral fee?
So for years, guys, I love this. So in my mentorship, sub2.com mentorship, I do so much stuff with probate attorneys that I actually ended up creating a bonus course inside of my course all about teaching my students. Yeah, obviously they learn creative finance, they learn all that stuff, but there's a bonus course at the end all about probate attorneys that gets released to them that teaches them exactly how to go into an attorney's office and get them to send you referrals, one. And number two, how to get an attorney to legally get paid on a deal. For years, I always got the probate attorneys to send me their leads because I was providing a service to them, not as a cash buyer, but as a property solutions business. I would handle dead cats, bio cleanup, landscape services, all this stuff for their clients so that I could get these referrals. But then I figured out how to legally get the attorney paid on a probate referral. They don't get paid a referral fee. They end up getting paid a joint venture fee on my side, and they have to disclose it to their client up front. And I have that document that I share with my students all about how to get probate attorneys to send you deals so they can make. I cut a check to my probate attorney. Anybody that watches my content, his name's Rylas. I sent him a check for referral fees, $10,000 in July. So yes. You'll see Rylas on my Instagram, and you'll see him in a lot of my YouTube videos. Rylas is one of my probate attorneys I work with, and all he does, this is what's gangster about working with probate attorneys. They have all this SEO that's driving traffic to their site. People call them and like ask them, "What's your price of probate?" The attorneys tells them the price, and then the prospective client goes, "That's too much money. I'll just do a self-performing probate," and they go off on their merry way. So Rylas and other probate attorneys don't have a way to monetize on that cheapskate mother effer who doesn't want to hire the probate attorney. So what I teach my attorneys to do is get that person to at least call me. I'll buy the house, and when I buy the house, I'll pay you a referral fee. You'll make $5,000 on a referral fee on a deal you don't actually have to do the probate work for, whereas you did the probate work and you would have gone through a 3 to 6 month time frame. You would only made $3,000 to $5,000 in the first place.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about that for 2 hours.
That's a whole different show. I got 2 in probate right now, so probate is a huge lead source. It's
the best. It's the best, and people are afraid of probate attorneys, so it's like an untapped frontier where only people that understand how to talk to probate attorneys really are going in there and tapping into that resource.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, we know you guys are legend in the games. You guys did 24 hours of this live stuff.
Oh yeah, bro. We're just barely getting warmed up, dog. What are you talking about?
Grace, why don't you tell the listeners more about how they can contact you? Tell them a little bit about the Sub2 program, which is killer. I want to be able to make sure that people know exactly how to reach out.
So check this out. You guys are going to get, like, your minds are going to be blown with this. So I just released a new mini course inside of my mentorship called the No Excuses program. Okay. So what I did is I sat down and I said, what are the 25 things that are obstacles to get anybody getting their first deal? Okay. What are those 25 things? Let's go through those just really quick. I won't go through all 25, but I'll go through like 10. I don't know what list to pull, because if I pull a list and I spend it on the wrong list, I got bad leads and I got a limited budget. I don't know what systems you use, because what if I use this text service, but they suck and I waste all this money, right? I'm afraid of that. I don't know what to say to a seller when I first start. I don't know how to negotiate. I don't know how to comp. I don't have earnest money. I don't have the right paperwork. I don't know how to actually close a seller. I don't know how to, do all these things along the way. I just created a no excuses program. So once you finish my course, you would now get into a new mini course called No Excuses, where my team pulls the list for you, and we pull the list. We pay for the list. I do all the skip tracing. I pay for all the skip tracing. My team will negotiate with the sellers for you. My team will close the deal. My team will pay for the earnest money. My team, Rochelle Jarvis, you know how badass she is, Jory. Rochelle Jarvis will run the transaction. I will fund any deal that you're doing as long as you're in my mentorship. All you have to do is leverage my team to go out and do your first deal. and you will literally have no excuses. So I'm like trying to build a mentorship that will embarrass anybody else trying to build a mentorship. I'm trying to raise the level so high that if you come into my mentorship, you have literally no excuses to either do your first deal or scale your business, because I've removed every single obstacle in your way to getting to where you want to be. And that's why everybody's talking about sub2.com. It's like, yo, why are all these people popping off wholesale deals and novation agreements and all this stuff over here? I thought Pace was only teaching sub2. No, guys, we teach it all.
Yeah.
All right. It's just like Jory and Kevin. Like, you run into a deal, your strategy doesn't determine how you lock up that deal. The seller's situation determines the outcome of that deal.
Exactly.
And you need to have the tools to adhere to that. And that's what I love about these two guys, is that you guys also are doing that in multiple markets. So sub2.com, if you guys are interested, great. But I really don't care. You join it, don't care, whatever. Here's what I would do. I would tell more people about this podcast, because there are not enough creative finance podcasts with people that actually know what they're talking about. And I can tell you spending time with Jory, that Jory is as real of a deal as it gets. And if you guys are trying to learn creative finance, this is the spot. Or potentially, if you have some extra time to be inundated with all the posts, my creative finance with Pace Morby Facebook group, it's like a tidal wave of content. So be very careful trying to ride that wave. But I would subscribe to this YouTube channel. If you're my students, I see a lot of my students in the comments.
Yeah,
if you're my students, show Jory and Kevin some love. Subscribe here, and maybe go in the comments and if it's in Facebook or wherever, tag some friends and raise awareness for this badass podcast.
Appreciate you, man. Definitely appreciate you, man. I appreciate when I came out to Arizona, the hospitality you showed me.
You're my brother.
Let me drive your truck around. And we talked a lot, man. I love talking to guys that are doing deals. One thing me and Pace said is, like, what he says is true. It's so true to find people who are actually doing deals, not just talking about it, but doing it, right? And I mean, Kevin, that's why me and Kevin connected, because we were doing deals. I connected with you right away because the same thing. And we got to keep spreading the knowledge. You know, me and Brent, we all talk too about we're doing deals. Brent Moreno, you know, we got to spread the knowledge of guys actually doing deals and help the people out. So love you that you came on, man. Took time out from your day in Montana. Get back to the RV.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you so much. I can't wait to hang out with you guys soon. Jory, when I'm flying to Phoenix tonight, I think we should have a conversation of putting like 25 names together and creating our creative finance mastermind. Just tight-knit guys, sharing strategies, sharing paperwork, all sorts of stuff, and just helping each other out as a brotherhood and, you know, a sisterhood if we can find some women that want to join. But I look forward to hanging out with you guys more in the future. Thank you for having me on.
Definitely hit me up. You got my number. Send me a text. All right, guys.
We're out.